Hi everyone, and welcome to my video for Nier on the PlayStation 3. This is my New Game Plus playthrough for Ending B. Now, this is where the game just kind of blew me away. Getting the first ending in the game was really good, and I have very few complaints about the story to get the first ending. But Ending B and the New Game Plus playthrough is something I have not seen in any game that I've played probably ever. And that's, giving the player a new perspective from a different character. In this case, it's Kaine, and it starts off with a very lengthy text intro that talks about her background, her relationship with her grandmother, how she was teased and bullied as a child, and how she was taken over or fused kind of with a shade, which is sort of like making a deal with the devil. And it's all very good. It's very long, so I didn't leave a lot of that in here. But the story or the backstory is really well done and gives so much context into just little one-liners that happen throughout the game that you would never have even noticed your first time through. When she wakes up from this flashback, I think one of the first things she says is "Grandma," and after hearing Emil's voice, which kind of gives you chills. I don't remember if that happened in the first playthrough. I'm assuming it does. And she also makes a comment here about the lunar tear flower that Nier gives her after she recovers, and she makes a comment that it's nothing like the ones Grandma made. And if you didn't have the backstory, that line would just be okay. That's kind of a cool little historical bit of her background, but having the backstory and all the troubles she went through, and knowing what you know about her grandmother and her relationship, totally changes it. And that happens throughout this entire playthrough. I was just stunned at times, in that this totally changes so many of the big events that happen throughout Nier. And during your first playthrough, it feels like a standard action game, and the story is a very good one about you trying to save and cure your daughter from the Black Scrawl, and so you're going around and killing all these shades and collecting these things, and ultimately going to defeat the Shadow Lord to basically reunite yourself with your daughter. But it's not that simple, and so I think that is just brilliant, because throughout this playthrough, I started to feel less sympathetic towards Nier, and I felt more of those feelings towards the shades, which is pretty crazy. After you've spent so much time with your party going through the game the first time, and I did spend a lot of time on side quests and everything, so it took me 25 or so hours to finish my first playthrough. You can finish these New Game Plus playthroughs in just a few hours, but when I did my Ending B playthrough, I did sit through all of the story sequences just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And what was interesting when I was making this video is that I was able to focus on the dialogue that happens during combat, and a lot of times that's missable because you are focusing so much on what's going on and trying to stay alive that you miss out on a lot of the dialogue. But before I get to that, here's the first example showing Gretel laying next to the dead Hansel that you killed when you first came into the Lost Shrine. And she's very sad, and these shades come up to her, and at first she's like, "Get away from me," she's very depressed and angry, but then she sees kind of her wrongs, and says, I've treated you poorly, and I think she says something to the effect that they can get along and they can get through the rest of their lives and spend all that time with one another. But then what happens? You show up, and that adds quite a bit of weight, because the first time through you didn't see that. You didn't see that scene with Gretel and Hansel and the child shades, and so you just thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna beat the crap out of this boss and move on. And in most games, that's exactly what happens, and I think that's exactly what the creators of Nier wanted you to think, is that, okay, this is just another boss battle, a means to an end. But you see all this dialogue that's happening, it's like, stop hurting my friends, and every time you do one of these fights, it's very painful. Very painful for the Shades. They're losing their friends and family. And you are seen as the enemy who doesn't understand them at all, doing these very cruel things for arguably personal gains. So very, very cool the way they totally turn the tables on the player. And now the things you're doing have so much bigger consequence, and you also now get to see a glimpse into I think it's Tyrion, which is the shade that's inside Kaine, and he talks throughout the game, and he's sort of like, he sounds like the Joker, a little over the top in terms of the voice actor, but gives you some insight, and things change throughout the playthrough, which gives insight into how Kaine changes. So this is the next one, and this is one of my favorite story arcs. This is back at the junk heap, and from the first playthrough, all you saw was the scene where Jacob gets killed, and Gideon sees this robot and thinks that the robot killed his brother. So now he has this intense hatred for all robots. But this scene sets the stage with this looks like a mother and daughter shade, and the mother's trying to protect the child and goes off to fight against the humans, or the Gestalt, and she obviously doesn't make it, and so the child is left alone to kind of fend for himself. But in the process, he runs into the robot you saw from Jacob and Gideon's cutscene, and find out that the robot, I think his name is P33, and the Shade just calls him Beepy, which is kind of cute. They become very close friends, and sort of like Gretel and the other Shades want to spend the rest of their lives together, and they're perfectly content until you come along. And so you start to feel like, wow, you don't hate Nier for doing what he's doing, because I don't think he understands. I don't think he understands what he's actually doing and the pain he's causing. I don't think you can understand what they're saying, but Kaine can, because she does have a Shade with her, and so all of this Shade dialogue is now shown and subtitled. So anytime they talk, you now see their dialogue in battle, which adds a tremendous amount of context and emotion that wasn't there before. It was a lot more straightforward. And so here, at the end of the Jacob and Gideon cutscene, you see P33 and Gideon wrongfully assumes that the robot is what caused his death, and there's an additional scene here where the Shade and BP are talking, and said that the noise they made is what caused the structure to fail, and the young Shade says, "Oh, it's too bad. They seem really nice." And so it's very touching that this Shade is just a friendly creature. And these scenes, add to that, where they're kind of playing together. It's kind of like May sitting on Totoro's belly. And they say, "Oh, let's travel the world, do all this stuff together. We need to go." Almost a little Calvin and Hobbes like. And so yeah, that kind of sets the tone for what is to come. So here I'm rounding out my weapons. You need all the weapons in order to get endings C and D. So I went ahead and bought myself some bountiful fertilizer and rice, and planted and harvested the crops, and got some money, and have bought the rest of the weapons that you can buy from the blacksmiths. And so this right here, this damaged treasure map quest, you have to do it in order to get one of the weapons, and it is a long one. So you have to get the map from the library, take it to the facade, gather items for the shopkeeper there. He fixes the map, does all this other stuff. You have to go back to the facade after the wife of the treasure hunter gives you something. So there's a lot of steps, and I come back to it in a little while. But here's an example of Tyrion interjecting some dialogue in scenes that didn't have them before, which is kind of cool. So right here, you're heading to the Eyrie, and yeah, again, there's dialogue that occurs from the shades that I believe wasn't there, and I could be wrong, and I apologize if I just didn't notice it my first time through, but there does seem to be a lot more shade dialogue that was not in the game before, that adds depth to scenes that previously didn't have them. So there's Tyrion interjecting some stuff. He's always sort of egging Kaine on to be a killer and be angry and be evil. And here, the villagers, or the shades that inhabit the village, are basically saying, you're the monster. Why are you killing us all? And you do get hints of that in the first playthrough, but again, here there's a lot more dialogue that occurs, and so it makes you kind of feel bad for what you're doing. Something I mentioned in my video from yesterday is that you do have to do all these things, and there's a part of you that understands why Nier has to do all these things, but as you go through more and more of the game, you really start to question why, or you're doing all these things, but at what price? What is the price for you saving your daughter from the Black Scrawl? Is it worth the hundreds or thousands of lives you're taking? I don't know. It's kind of up to you, right? So a lot of good stuff to think about in this game. It's not very straightforward, and again, I like the ambiguity of whether Nier is seen as a hero or villain, and the same with the shades. So a lot of good stuff that I know has probably been resulted in great conversations on the internet and between fans of this game. And so here is another one of my favorites. This one really did a number on me. So before the wedding, there's now this scene with this wolf shade and the wolf pack, and he says right here that he has faith in humans, that we can live side by side again, and so his intentions are really good, and he tells his pack to believe in him. But then this happens. They find out that one of the wolves is in a human's trap, and starts to question the goodness of humans. And here is a very sad scene where these soldiers from the facade have trapped and killed a good number of the wolves, I guess to protect the king and queen during their wedding. And it's an interesting commentary on a human's, I guess, natural tendency to doubt or want to hurt things that they don't understand. We've seen it a lot in films, humans destroying nature, humans destroying other creatures and the consequences of that. And I think it's great that it makes you think through scenes like this that, you know, last a long time and make you focus on them for a while and make you look at things that you may not want to look at, but at the same time it really changes the scenes that are coming up, you know, where the wolves attack you know, the king and queen and the others during the wedding. In the first playthrough, you just kind of assumed that they are just natural enemies and have been enemies for a long time, and it was just sort of bad timing. But you kind of go with it and say, well, it's an event that happens that kind of sets the rest of that facade story arc in motion after he kills Fira. And so you believe it, and you feel bad for the king, and you, like him, you sort of want revenge for what they did. But now, with all of this that's happened, and knowing that they had good intentions and that it was the humans that did what they did to, you know, make them really angry, you understand why the wolves reacted the way they did and did what they did. Does it make it right? No, but you can certainly understand why it happened. And so I think that, I guess, misunderstanding between humans and the wolves really adds a layer of complexity and depth to this story arc that I think just totally blew me away. And it's like the junk heap is my favorite of these Act 2 arcs in the game. So after you fight them, you know, again, here you can hear what the wolf shade is saying. And so again, you understand why the king is doing what he's doing, but you know, there's a part of you that starts to think, well, wow, you know, what would it have been like had the other wolves not been destroyed, and if they had been able to live in harmony again. And there's a scene coming up right here that shows that they did live in harmony, because the wolf right here had a previous owner, so it shows that they were able to live together peacefully. And yeah, the scene really gives me chills. It's done so well. But yeah, yeah, I think it's just one of those things that I if you know somebody who maybe just played this game a little bit and kind of gave up on it, or they finished it the first time and they haven't had time to go back and play through New Game Plus because they think it's just kind of there for maybe achievements or a couple new quests or a little bit of story additions to the story, then please try to get them to go back and finish it, and at least play through it I'd say 1.5 times, since you don't have to do the first half of the game again in New Game Plus, which is great. I'm glad you don't have to do all that stuff, getting the sealed verses again. Although there's a part of me that kind of wouldn't mind doing that. Maybe not now, but in the future, if I do play Nier again, I think that first half of the game might read a little differently, knowing all the stuff I know now from the game. So anyway, getting back to the video, these next few sections is where I'm kind of rounding out some of the other side quests in order to get, I believe it's the remaining weapons that are tied to side quests. And so in this one, you go on a mission to rid the temple of these bandits. And so you go back in, you clear out these rooms again. They don't have the bullet puzzles that you had to go through the first time you went into these rooms. They now have just enemy encounters, so they're they're a little more interesting, or quick, I should say. And they all have rules just like before, like you can't evade or you can't stop moving, that sort of thing. So you go through and you eventually get to this 6th room and take out a big shade, head back out to where the bandit is. And the reason why I think you have to do this quest is because it triggers the next one, where you talk to the King of the Facade, who is up on the roof in his, I guess his house, and he'll send you on another quest to come back here again, and take care of the big shade that's hiding in the room where you fought the boss, that giant rotating cubic boss from the first half of the game. And there I got my trophy, my silver for go-to guy, which I believe you get after you complete 30 side quests. And that one, I'm not sure if it actually triggered after I did 30. It might have done it late. I don't know if it's just a late check that the game does, but didn't immediately trigger. But it did eventually. So I've read that I think that's the one that kind of glitches for people. And so in the middle of the desert, you're running to this big shade who's very, very easy to beat. But once you beat him, that'll complete a quest, and then you can go finish the quest here in the temple. And the temple will right here you'll fight the this guy, but pretty easy. Your weapon will get rid of most of those projectiles. And once you beat him, you go back to the king, and he will give you a weapon. So you go back here, small reward, and you get a Labyrinth Song, which is, one more weapon in the game. Tell this guy that you killed the shade in the desert, and he'll give you, I think, 30 grand. Yep. Always helpful. Complete that quest, and then you go back to the junk heap and fight this boss. And again, in your first playthrough, you just think you're fighting this boss in this shade, no big deal. But now, after you've seen the side story, it's like, oh man, you're destroying, you're ruining their lives, which is really sad. And then this scene, he flies up, and in your first playthrough, you think he's just ramming the ceiling and dropping pieces of metal on you, but he's trying to escape or trying to save the young shade. And so they both die, and he says, I wanted to be with you together. And that's very sad. And Gideon and no one else really sees it. And Tyrion is happy that it's just people are angry and destroying things. So that's a really good one, the junk heap. And so getting back to this damaged treasure map, you bring the items back here, you'll fix your map, and you take that back to the village. And I believe, let's see what happens here. So it gives you, I think, she gives you another map. And then you got to take it to Popola. So this quest just kind of sends you almost on this wild goose chase. And I don't know about some of the other quests, but this one, it just was really, really long. And here you go. You got to go back to the Lost Shrine and work your way up to the second floor. You'll find this pile of junk. It's like, yep, the treasure hunter's husband isn't going to be happy. You fight again, and you can grab this part of this tree root, which I did, but for some, I totally forgot to finish this quest before I got the ending B. And this took me forever to find. It's the exit, so that you don't trigger the end of the game. You can actually leave the Lost Shrine. So you bring back this pile of junk, and then she gives you this song and dance about selling this hair ornament for gold and bring it back and give that to the husband. So you gotta take this hair ornament from her, take it to the facade, take it back to this strange thing shopkeeper. He gives you a gold coin. You go back to the village. It's like, yay, the map was right. So give him the gold, and then he, from here, gives you the first map you ever found. You take it. Go back to Popola. It's so insane. And so you go up there, and she tells you that there's another treasure hidden by the bridge in the Northern Plains. So off to the Northern Plains you go, and you will see the marker pretty easily, and this will give you the labyrinth, I think it's Shout. And I think up to that point, after you do those quests and get the weapons from the shops and find the other ones that are strewn throughout the world, you should have about 97% weapon completion. And there's an iron pipe left that I think you can either do it through a quest, and I think that quest is a pretty long one, or you can just finish ending B and you'll automatically get it. I don't know why, but you do, and so I'm glad I found that out. And so that's what I did. I just finished this playthrough and got the last weapon. And so with 100%, you will not only get the achievement for that, but you will also be able to see the third and fourth endings of the game. So this is another kind of sad scene. You just think your first time through, you're defeating these shades, but no, they're these couples that this is their sanctuary, and they're happy here, and here you are killing them and destroying lives and everything in the process. So it's just they're just defending what they love, and so it is very tragic, and it's kind of depressing when you think about what you're doing. So yeah, and here these shades you think are just shooting at you. They're children. It turns out that they're children, and this next scene shows them going to their mother. And I believe that comment that Vice makes there, are they screaming or yelling, or are they crying? Makes a lot more sense now that you know that they are children. And then you see that line. It's like they're just babies. Leave them alone. And so you think the shade that kind of turns into the boar. The babies surround her. It's kind of their last stand. So again, just the conflict, right, between the replicants or the humans and the shades. Very ambiguous. And, you can make an argument for either side, which is doing the right thing and which isn't. And it's all about perspective. Without having the perspective that you do throughout this playthrough, you might feel that a little bit in the first time you play through the game, but it really comes to light now. There's Tyranny kind of egging you on again, making you feel even more guilty than you already are.
Like you're any different. It is just another crush.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And unfortunately, during this playthrough, because I was focused so much on battle, actually I'll get back to that. This scene is just fantastic. So, after the folks from the facade come and help you escape, they stay to fight this boar. And this is a very sad scene. It's a really good scene, but very, very sad. And so the king is, he's doesn't have much life left in him. Neither does the boar. So it's sort of like this final standoff. Shade is angry that they've destroyed everything they know. But he. I think the king just wants his wife. He's just lost the woman he loves, and it's a good line. You can die now. I think it has a double meaning. And so as he finally takes out the shade, he kind of slumps down and says that he's coming for his wife Fira. So very tragic, but very poignant. This game handles its characters and storylines and the relationships so carefully, and it really makes them feel very, very much real. So I really love that. So here you see that soon his body will arrive, which is you. It's almost like this plot to bring you together so that he can take your body and then be back with Yona. You kind of want the same thing. You want the shade out of her so that you can be with the shell part. So good stuff. And that right there is a neat little exchange between Tyrion and Kaine, and how Tyrion is noticing that she no longer has the burning anger and hatred inside of her, and all he sees now is sort of this white light, and he doesn't really understand it. So I think it's a neat way that shows that Kaine has changed, especially in this latter half of the game. And so yeah, I left a lot of this in here. There isn't too much that's that's different from the first playthrough, but there is some dialogue from Shadow Lord that helps add a little bit. It's nothing that's mind-blowing here, since most of the dialogue does come from Yona. But I think the more you play this game, the more you start putting connecting all the dots in terms of the story and the various motives behind the characters, and it starts to all really crystallize and make sense at the end. So it's really good, and it's kind of neat that things seem to work out better for the shades. At least that's kind of the way I read it. Maybe not so much. It's not as clear cut for the humans, but the shades, I think, end up the way they want. Maybe to a certain extent the humans do too, but again, I think it's you have to ask yourself at what cost did it come with? What price did they have to pay?
I'm sorry, Dad.
And so after this scene is the the final showdown, and it is, I have to say that from a gameplay perspective, it's not all that challenging, and neither was much of the final part of this game, but I was playing it to see where the story went. The gameplay, to me, even though it's kind of sacrilege to say when you're talking about a game is that the gameplay was definitely secondary in experiencing Nier. It's it gets the job done, and there's a lot to do in the game, but is it all that interesting to do? I don't know. Not really. It's not terrible, but the gameplay won't be winning any awards. Writing, on the other hand, and the story in this game, I think it's one of the best I've ever experienced in a game. Really makes you think about what we do as humans, how we treat others, our future, and what's important in life. And I think it really comes down to the relationships and the lasting relationships and bonds we create with others that matters most. But to not neglect or assume that things that we don't understand are evil. So, good messages in this game, and it's a lot to think about and discuss. So, not sure why I left this entire this entire fight in there. It's not any different from the other ones. So this is an interesting one. Nier kind of sticks to his guns and takes him out at the end. Perhaps not realizing what he's doing. But he's been driven. He's been driven by a singular purpose, and he definitely stays with that to the bitter end. So these scenes here are new, where the Shade version of Nier is sitting and talking sadly about how he's let Yona down, but then something very, very cool happens. You're taken back to this scene, and I literally said, "What the heck?" when I was playing this. And it's kind of cool. You kind of go back behind here where the opening scenes between you and Yona appear, and you find out that she's sick.
Here, Dad.
And so,
You
yeah,
can have this cookie.
this kind of ties it all back together to the beginning of the game,
But
and that these
that's what you
memories
said
are,
yesterday.
still alive and well
You haven't been eating anything.
with
have you?
your Shade version. So it's a very sweet scene.
Come on.
And again, with everything that you've experienced throughout the game and what you've been through, really adds a lot of weight to it. And at first it seems very sad. He's thinking back to this, and it kind of jumps forward to him sitting there alone. And then this wonderful shot of all the other shades and people from the game right there. That gives me chills. And then another wonderful thing happens is
Dad.
Yona appears. And so I like this because he's still in a shade form. They show her in her human form, and when she runs to him, they're both in human form. And so it shows that they are
Thanks
They
for
are
always
together.
being there for me. Oh, here. I brought your half.
Love that. Really, really good. And then the credits play, and then a nice little bookend scene happens here. And who knows if this was even necessary, but it's kind of nice that they didn't forget about Emil after the first playthrough, where you think he's gone forever, but no, he makes it. Not entirely intact; it's just a head, but he does make it, and talks about how And it's kind of hard to move as a head, and now he, one of the first things he says, is he wonders where everyone is, and he can't wait to see them again. And I don't know if he ever does. I don't think that's ever resolved, so there is a bit of sadness that tinges this a bit. You're happy that he's alive, but will he ever see his friends? We don't know. And that ends ending B. And ending C says after you get all the weapons, you'll be able to make a final decision at the end of the game. And you'll get a trophy for this, get all your weapons, I think another silver for that. And then you go through it again for C or D. Anyway, thanks for checking this out, and I will see you in the next video.